Hi, guys, and welcome back to the Four Pillars of Healing. I'm Nichola, your host, and I'm very excited to hold space in this conversation with today's guest. Today's conversation is with someone who doesn't just speak about healing, she lives inside it. Terrye MJ and I have known each other for well over 14 years. And what matters about that is that this isn't a conversation that's born from admiration at a distance. It's one that comes from a shared history, lived experiences, and a very deep mutual witnessing over time. Terrye has one foot firmly planted in the metaphysical realm and the other grounded in real embodied human work. She is someone who can read energy with extraordinary precision and yet speak about it in a way that is anchored and practical and responsibility based. She doesn't rescue or fix or bypass healing. She is the bridge. I've personally been on Terrye's healing table many times over the years, and I can honestly say that some of the most intense, expansive, and very clarifying healings and visions that I've ever experienced have happened in that space with Terrye. Not because she does healing to you, but because she creates the conditions where your own system remembers how to heal itself. What Terrye really does is act as a translator, and she helps people understand what their body and nervous system and energy field have been trying to say, often for a very long time. She brings language to the wordless, structure to the unseen, and safety to places that have been holding tension, protection, or unresolved experience. In her work and in who she is as a human, Terrye is a bridge between mind and body and spirit and science, and importantly, between surviving and actually living an aligned, self-led place. This conversation isn't centered on grief alone, even though grief may appear, just like trauma, identity shifts, and awakening often do. Instead, it's about what Terrye has seen through years of holding space for others and what she's learned through her own healing path and what becomes possible when people start participating in it. This is a conversation about patterns, nervous system truth, responsibility without shame, and remembering that healing isn't something that's done to us. It's something that emerges through us when the conditions are right. So, welcome, Terrye. I'm so honored to have you on the show, and I know this meaningful conversation is going to land very deeply in the hearts of those that are listening.
Thanks, Nicola. Happy to be here and share whatever
No.
you can with your audience.
Thank you. Witnessing your work over all this time, something I'm really curious about is what you actually see over time in a person's healing journey. And people, I would imagine, would come in with very different stories and experiences and even ways of explaining what they've been through. But I imagine underneath all of that, there are patterns, and not so much about what's happened, but how it's been held and how it's lived in the body and in the nervous system and in the way someone moves through their world. And sometimes what we call personality is more of an adaptation to the situations that people are faced with, and ways of being that maybe once made sense but were never actually meant to be permanent. So I'd love to ask, when you work with people over time, what patterns do you see again and again beneath often very different trauma stories?
I can understand that a question like that might seem impertinent, right? But the way that I
Yes.
work, everybody is, like you said, so different that there
Yes.
is not one pattern that I see again and again and again. The only patterns that I see are the emotions,
Yeah.
right? The emotions that we've stored from our life experiences that, like you said, and most people are aware, that make up your personality.
Yeah.
We have those core things that are the baseline of our personality, of course, but then how we're responding to our life experiences are layered on top of that. the
Yeah.
personality, how you tend to deal with it, right? And then we
Yeah.
store those. I think there's a book called The Body Keeps the Score. So all that information is stored in the body. So patterns that I see are frequency patterns. Okay, because I communicate with the language of the universe, which is vibrational energy, that means that I get to see belief patterns, emotional patterns, the quality of that frequency. So thoughts are a vibration of energy, so are our emotions that are stored
Yeah.
in the brain and throughout the body and in our non-physical selves as well, because we have our chakra system, our meridian system, our aura system. So there's energy frequency held in all of those areas. So everybody is vastly different in that. So, I get to see the pattern that comes through, maybe through the eyes and how someone is perceiving reality, whether it's an environment or people, and how they're bringing that through the patterns of their limbic brain and the areas within the limbic brain and where it's stored in the cerebellum, because in the energetic world, the cerebellum is where we hold our patterns. That's
Yeah.
emotional patterns, belief patterns, ancestral patterns that we're playing out. The cerebellum energetically holds all that. So I get to see the quality of energy through all those layers. And then my job is to be present, allow that conscious energy, whatever you might call it, God, or I just say source, allow that source wisdom to come through frequency. And I watch and observe that shift. And that could be like through the whole brain, or it could be through, energy around a cell. It could be this corpus callosum fibers within the brain. It's always unique and different.
Yeah.
So it's not really the patterns that, somebody in counselling might talk about, because I don't
Yeah.
deal with that kind of stuff. The
Yeah.
counselling comes through, but it's from the wisdom of spirit in order to give people the information so that they can now work on those energy shifts that have occurred during that session to
Yeah.
continue if they choose.
Yeah.
Does that
And
make
is
sense?
that, pardon?
Does that make sense, or do you have more questions
Yeah,
around
no, it
it?
does.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yep. And then do you see that only happening in the brain, or do you see that happening in other parts of the body or in the field, or like what are you?
Yep. So I see that everywhere.
Yeah. Wow.
And everybody is different, right?
Hmm.
For what will come through. Sometimes it is simply that their energy system is so overwhelmed that
Yeah.
I'm just going to be the conduit of energy, and I'm just going to witness it go through a couple of places.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, you have to work through layers sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
But I see it everywhere. It could be in the liver, it could be the stomach, it could be the physical heart. Like I've learned anatomy because spirit has shown me how to see inside the body.
Yeah. Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah,
That's amazing.
it's exciting.
I've always, or I said this to you the other day, I would love to like have a lens that I could like jump inside your eyes
Yeah.
when you're doing what you're doing, so I could see what you're seeing. Like I think
Mm,
it's amazing and crazy at the same time, but it's so cool. Like I
yeah,
would love to be able to see that.
yeah. But I get the gamut of the skill set as well. So, but
Yeah.
my most powerful one is the knowing. So
Yes.
I might see parts of the body might appear in front of me like a holograph with
Yeah.
my third eye vision, and I work with it in the hologram.
Yeah.
Sometimes I get to see the anatomy in the brain where, as
Yeah.
if I'm looking through a microscope, and I get to see that tiny area become larger.
Yeah. Wow.
Then I get to see the energy working with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
So,
That's
but
amazing.
it's not like watching it on a movie screen either,
No, 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 no.
because I get the physical feeling, I get the knowing, which is the largest one, and then I get
Yeah.
a bit of an image, and they all make sense
Yeah. Yeah.
and tell me the story. Yeah,
That's amazing.
it is. Because I've only been
Oh,
doing this for 20 years. Like it started 20 years ago. We're at the
yeah.
20th year now. I knew nothing about any of this kind of thing being real before
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, it's evolved as you've evolved, essentially. Yeah, it's pretty cool, man. Imagine what you're going to be doing in 20 years' time.
Oh my gosh. There's people being born now that have the skills that have taken me 20 years
Yeah, yeah,
because the reality is shifting, right?
yeah, shifting, absolutely.
Yeah.
I always feel like people who, well, I don't think there's too many people actually that do your type of work. So I don't want to pigeonhole you into anything, it being too broad. But people who are in the healing field, I will say, as opposed to trying to pigeonhole you into, because you are pretty unique in what you do. But they don't arrive at the work that they do by accident. There's usually a process of being stripped back and identities softening and roles falling away and ways of being that maybe once felt necessary but no longer fitting. And it's not a gentle process. I have witnessed that through many humans that are walking a similar path to you. But that process of stripping back and kind of almost losing identity there for a little bit shapes how someone can actually hold that space for the healing space for others, because there's a difference between understanding something and then actually having lived it yourself. So I'm really curious, in your experience, what did your own healing have to strip away before you could truly hold space for others in the work that you do?
Yeah, okay. Mine was horrific, absolutely horrific, and it lasted for about 4 years.
Yeah, wow.
So, I'm quite an analytical person. I'm very grounded in what I
Yeah,
do.
yeah,
And I can look back now. Let me just jump around a little bit. I can look back now before this opened up. I can look back and see the opportunities where I could have developed these skills or awoken them, because they're there for everybody. But I have a
yeah,
contract in this life to develop it, right, and share it. And I can see those opportunities when I look back at my life now, but I didn't take them. So the catalyst of change for me was when I became a parent and I developed postnatal depression, but it wasn't identified. And because of my personality, it's like if there's hardship or there's struggle or, things just aren't flowing, well, then you just, you know, put on your big girl panties, strap on your boots, and you just get the
yeah,
job done. So that's what I did, right? And then I had my second daughter quite close to my first, and then I got postnatal depression again. So that's compounding, right? But that's shifting. What that is doing is shifting your neural pathways.
yeah,
And if it's not dealt with, that's going to get a lot worse. And it did. It got into depression, and then it started to sync up with my monthly cycle. So every time I got and this is over years, and intuition is developing at the same time. So I'm actually thinking I'm going crazy because I'm seeing things that don't exist in this reality as we know it, right? So I
yeah,
think I'm going crazy. I'm hearing spirit, and all these other things are going on. And eventually I said to my husband, I think I have to go somewhere, be admitted. I'm going crazy. And he said, no, no, you're just getting really intuitive. So it got to a stage where 1 month with my cycle, I'd get more depressed as the cycles came, right? And by about the fourth month of this happening, I am jumping ahead quite quickly through the
yeah,
process, obviously. One day I thought about ending my life, and I thought, that's not me.
yeah,
That is not me. So lucky that I am quite a strong person, that I was able to catch that, because it was a strong sensation, and it had
yeah,
been growing right over the years, over the months. And then so I called out for help, and I went down the mainstream of doctors and some medication that just didn't work. So I stopped it, and then Spirit said, we can help you. And then Spirit told me how to rewire my brain, how to restructure myself. And I had to lean into trust, and I found that really hard. So developing intuition, not just with all the physical things going on and mental things going on, the trusting was really hard for me. And because, I didn't have anybody else around me that was doing anything like I was able to, do, or what was evolving within me. And so it was hard to trust.
mm,
But I did it, and I followed their guidance for a year, restructured my brain, became a whole new person, whole new insights opened up, came back to harmony and balance, and then just started the journey of the intuitive development.
That's amazing.
Yeah. But I also learnt in that time in the beginning, I also learnt some healing modalities.
Yeah.
Now, and I didn't believe in them either. It was just
Yeah.
like I was saying, I was very mainstream analytical, but I
Yeah.
had studied yoga teaching after my first daughter was born. And the opportunity came in there to learn an energy healing. And it didn't make any sense to me, but I would, I'm an open mind as well. So I went
Yeah.
along and I thought, well, I'm here, I'll do it. And that my teacher ended up saying, look, I can't explain this anymore to you. But I'm like, it doesn't make sense. Energy? What is energy? Anyway, she said, just keep practicing. So I did while not believing in any of it. And then I started to feel like a wave of warm energy just pour, as if it was coming out of a jug, pouring through my crown chakra and moving through my whole body. I remember that being the first sensation. And I said, okay, there is something to this. I don't understand, but I'll keep learning. And
Yeah.
so I did all these other modalities and levels, and each time I did, my senses became more attuned, more refined. But then I also worked on the internal. So I worked on my thought patterns. I worked on how I respond. I worked on judgments of self, judgments of reality, judgments of others, my
Yeah.
emotional body as well. So I did all the internal work, and that's what really shifts.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And was there because obviously you would have felt quite lonely in that process,
Yeah,
especially back then.
absolutely.
Was there anyone at the time that you were like, oh, that work really speaks to me, or that work really speaks? Like, was there anybody in particular in the kind of healing spirituality sort of space that you were like, yeah, I can resonate with that? Or was there
Oh,
just,
not really, but I'm a
yeah,
reader, so I picked up
yeah,
some books, and at the time it was, God, what's her name? She's known as the Angel Lady, but she's now stepped back from everything she's ever written and gone into religion.
Doreen?
Yes, Doreen.
Yeah,
What was her last name?
virtue.
Yeah, that's it. Doreen Virtue. So her books actually helped me a lot because
Yeah,
I was connecting with angels and archangels. So
yeah,
her books helped in the beginning. And
yeah,
Caroline Miss,
yeah,
the medical intuitive from America, she's
yeah,
extremely grounded in what she
yeah,
does, which
yeah,
resonates with me. And when I was going through that really hard time where I was worried whether I was going to still be here at the other end of it, she wrote about the dark night of the soul.
yes,
And to this day, I can't remember the details of what she wrote about it. But one
yeah,
thing that I do remember her saying is that if a lot of people that go through the dark night of the soul actually don't make it through. And she said
yeah,
the ones that make it through tend to have, for a better word, a gift to share, to expand consciousness, to help others
absolutely.
as their life agreement, right? So
Yeah,
the way that she wrote about it made me just suddenly become so calm inside that somebody understood exactly what I was going through.
hmm,
And if therefore I'm not alone and I can get through. That was
yeah,
another thing that helped.
yeah,
Yeah, but that was
yeah.
4 years of
Oh, Caroline's amazing. I remember I went to a talk that she did in Brisbane, and it was just incredible just to sit in her space and just listen and just be a sponge. She was incredible to listen to talk to, like just to listen to her speak was just, yeah, she's incredible lady.
yeah.
And her book, Anatomy of the Spirit,
Yep.
it's one of the first books that I bought when we just moved to Australia 25 years ago. Like I was in a metaphysical store in Manly, and that was the first book that I bought. Two crystals, my first two crystals that day, and that book.
Yeah, I have that book and
Crazy.
one other one of hers. So it's in
Yeah,
it's
I've got another one of hers as well, but I don't want to say what it is, so
yeah.
maybe I'll put it in the comments. But yeah, Anatomy of the Spirit, I think it's called. Is It's such a good book.
Yeah. She talks
Maybe
about
I'll
the
take mine.
archetypes of
Yeah.
personality in there, doesn't she?
Yeah. It's amazing. She's amazing.
Yeah.
And Joe's work, Joe Dispenza, because what
Yeah.
listening to you speak, it when I listen to Joe Dispenza's story of how he healed his very broken spine
Mm-hmm.
and what he witnessed laying in a bed for 6 months or 4 months, whatever it was that he was in his bed for, hospital bed. Just when you speak, it reminds me so much of what he did to himself to be
Yeah.
able to walk again.
Yeah. Yeah. So what he speaks about is pretty much what I do,
Yeah,
and what Bruce Lipton talks about
yeah,
in his book Biology of Belief.
yes,
That is what I do as well. But he does it
yeah,
in the layman's term scientifically. So it's a really good
yes,
book.
yeah. And I would imagine for someone who's quite analytical, because as much as I love Joe Dispenza, I am not an analytical human. But in the work that I, in the space that I'm sitting in, I have to have meaning. Like there has to be something factual to back up what I talk about. I
Yeah.
don't just want to spout crap. And so for my creative brain, I really struggle. I struggle with Bruce Lipton's books and I struggle with Joe's books because they're very analytical humans and I struggle like my side of my brain
Well,
that
have
is
you ever
meant to
listened?
be analytical is like,
Have you ever listened to Bruce on online, like in his videos on, let's say, YouTube?
yeah,
Because he's really animated.
yes,
He's really animated
yeah,
and excited about what he has to share. So that's
absolutely.
a good way to get his information as well.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, I'm just going to switch the gears a tiny bit. So, something that comes up a lot in healing work, and I think especially after witnessing you in your work, is that moment where someone suddenly sees clearly. And through your assistance, they're able to recognize what's out of alignment, feel it, put a name to it. It's like you were talking about before with your own story, when you're in those moments of the dark night of the soul where you're going through experiences, but you've got nothing to name it, or it just feels like you're having this crazy out of body experience that you just can't identify with. So when people come to that point where there is awareness, but the awareness doesn't always translate into change, and that can become confronting, because once you've seen something in yourself, there's a level of responsibility that comes with changing that and healing that part of yourself. And I'm curious about what you see in that space, when what happens when someone becomes aware of what's out of alignment in them, but they actually don't yet have the capacity or maybe the willingness to shift it. Because I know I've been on your table, and the first two times I was on your table, like there was a very big awareness of what needed to shift, but there was such an unwillingness to actually go home and do the work.
People think that, they're going to come and see you and you're going to fix everything.
Yeah, that I did.
Yeah.
I
But
was one of those people.
yeah. So, we're jumping ahead again here from your question, but
Yeah,
the fixing that I do is the energetic frequency within those areas of the brain
yeah,
and the organs and the energy systems,
yeah,
the frequency of the energy systems of chakras and auras and
yeah,
stuff. So it's very gentle. It's not such a vast jump from where someone is to somewhere else where they feel discombobulated and
yeah,
overwhelmed all over again. It's very gentle, and the amount of that shift that someone can experience depends on where they are at themselves with their own awareness.
yeah,
Have they been working on their thoughts and their emotions? Are they deep meditators? And deep meditators, I just mean spending time being quiet
yeah,
and sitting and maybe just focusing on the breath. It doesn't have to be an hour, it could be 20 minutes a day. But
Yeah.
that all adds up to how quick someone can shift, right? And
Yes.
also how open they are to receivership, because that's what it's all about. Because, the
Yes.
blind slit experiment is about making people aware it's our observation to this reality that creates and shifts our reality. So the
Yes.
same thing happens when you're doing energy work with somebody, is that I'm the conduit and the observer to
Yeah.
allow that to happen in this reality and within that body for that person. And how receptive and open they are also helps that process.
Yeah. Absolutely.
But you were asking about patterns, like what was
Well, more, because
capacity
I
to
know, I know from my own experience when I first started to recognize, going through that dark night of the soul and recognizing that there was something within, going through a lot of trauma and in my life, and recognizing that actually for me it was more about the fact that old trauma was catching up with me within my body and within my thought patterns, and especially around safety, and much the same as you. And I feel like it's a lot, it's these issues, especially childhood issues, I find tend to come up when we have children of our own. And I remember when I first had my eldest, Ava, I was so stressed and worried, and I couldn't be in busy places. And I just started to recognize patterns in myself that I didn't want to impart onto her. I didn't want her to grow up with an undercurrent of fear in her body that wasn't hers, because it was very much mine. And her father, had a similar thing. So when I first started outsourcing healing in my um, uh, in my kind of state at the time, I just assumed that you go and see a healer, and it's kind of like going to a therapist. You go and do, however many sessions, and then you've talked your way through your issues and you're good. And I figured that going to see a healer would be a similar thing, that you would go and you would get healing and you would go a few times and then that would be it, you would be healed. And then I very quickly realized that actually the healer is the person that holds the space and can quickly identify what needs healing and help you identify what needs healing, but the work itself actually comes back to me. And it's my responsibility to take on board, what the healer is doing, and B, what the healer is then saying to me, and for me to then go and do X, Y, and Z to assist in that process of healing. And I guess I would imagine if in my naivety that I thought that way, that there would be a lot of people walking around the world feeling the same way. So then when they come and get healing, and a healer, will identify, the areas of the body and the energy that needs shifting, but then there's an unwillingness from the person to actually shift it within,
yeah,
go and do the
sometimes
homework, basically.
yeah, but sometimes that unwillingness is not even conscious, right? Because
No,
there's a
that's
level of
right.
fear with
Yeah.
change. A lot of people can't deal with change. And
Yes.
but also if people don't have an understanding of what conscious energy is and how it affects them, and
Yeah.
what's the connection between their everyday life and their life experience and this out there energy consciousness and frequency that we're conversing about, right?
Yeah.
So while you were talking, Spirit was saying to me that it's also about how much quality of love frequency can we allow in.
Yes.
And there's levels of that. There's a conscious mental energy of that. There's a yearning element of that. There's a worthy element. Then you've got the subconscious patterning that you developed in your younger life on, you know, Are you worthy? Do you deserve it?
Yeah.
How does that look like? How does that feel? There's all these questions, Spirit was just saying. There's so
Yeah.
many different avenues of where that can land for somebody, but Spirit's
Yes.
saying that it all comes down to that quality of love that people will let through. And we're not talking about a human love.
No.
We're talking about the eternal love of consciousness, of source
Yeah.
itself that permeates reality and that allows for healing. It's the love, the frequency of love and joy, compassion that comes
Yeah.
through. And there's so many layers and levels of refinement of those sensations too
Yeah. Yeah.
that
Wow.
come through.
Yeah, absolutely. And how can someone begin to hold space for themselves during that liminal period?
Hmm.
Like, do you have any sort of ideas that you can give people that
It just takes me
they
back a
can?
little bit. It's the
Yeah.
first willingness to release judgment on what it
Yes.
should look like, feel like, occur, the speed. Work out where your judgment is
Mm-hmm.
and have a conversation with yourself around that judgment. It doesn't have to be intense either. It's just
Yeah.
you're bringing awareness to where you're at. And,
Yeah.
when we recognize that we're either judging ourselves or judging what we can allow in, because, sometimes that can be really challenging too, because someone's like, well, I want it. I want it. So why isn't that happening?
Yeah.
Because you haven't allowed yourself to really look at what has happened throughout your life to get you to where you are and what judgments are there.
Yes.
Because that's the resistance, that's the block, right?
Yes. Absolutely.
Because the
100%.
body's job is literally to hold the story of your life so that you can have
Yeah.
this experience and play it out. Your body's like a computer program, and your family, your environment, and the way you responded and watched other people respond created the patterns for you
Yes.
to begin to play out your existence in this life.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely.
So we do hold the
Absolutely.
information and the stories in there, but we have to be willing to ask ourselves a couple of questions
Hard questions.
and just, yeah, sometimes they can be hard, right? Because
Yeah.
we're not really taught, our society isn't part of, asking yourself any really insightful questions as we've been going through life in order to release patterns. And we embody, ancestral patterns as well as our own
Yes.
experience in this life.
100%. Absolutely. I'm
Yeah.
reading it. I've been reading this book for a while and I keep putting it down and then coming back to it because again, my brain, man, it's not good at reading and writing. Like I can read and write, obviously, but it's more like my brain doesn't absorb and retain information naturally that way. I'm a watcher and a doer. And I'm reading an amazing book by a psychotherapist who used to be a scientist. He used to be a geneticist. And his name's Mark Woolen. And he wrote a book called It Didn't Start With You. And it is the most incredible book. Starting out his life as a scientist and understanding the roles that genetics play, passed from human to human when we co create. But then he went into psychotherapy because he could literally scientifically see that there is a pattern between passing down generational trauma and how that comes up for the children that we're birthing and how it changes coming down through the male side versus and it's a lot stronger in the female side because obviously we carry the children and they feel everything from us as women, especially children pick up so much on what we do, and this book has been life changing for me in how I interact with my kids. I've read it's sort of split into three sections, and I've read the first two sections, and the first section is basically he's talking about how science and genetics play a role in passing on trauma that isn't ours. And then the middle part of the book are case studies from his clinic in San Francisco. And then the last part of the book is actually how to clear it out of your body. And I'm like, I just haven't quite gotten to that part yet, but it is amazing. Like
Yeah, that sounds interesting.
it's such a good book. Like it's so good.
Yes, because Spirit has shown me, yes, we carry the genetics of our physiology through
Yeah.
the ancestors, right? The DNA and everything that you're saying. But also the job of that physicality is to hold the energetic frequency of patterns.
Yes.
And like, for example, you won't develop breast cancer even if your mother, your sister, your grandmother, your auntie all had it, unless you resonated the frequency of the genetic pattern that created it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I've seen with a past client who had cystic fibrosis how 5 generations back that was created, and it started down the male line. The person was male as well. It started down the male line with a great grandfather
Mm.
who didn't feel valued and loved by the mother and unsupported by the father, and created a belief pattern that something around they didn't deserve, no, life was too hard.
Yeah.
Life was too hard. That
Yeah.
compounded into that person's son when he grew up.
Yeah.
He had a son, and life was, I'm not worthy of life.
Yes.
And that compounded into the next generation. And eventually, the father of the son that had cystic fibrosis had asthma, and his father had something with his lungs, I think. And because it was compounding through those generations, starting with, the one that didn't feel supported and loved,
Yeah. Yeah.
and therefore can't breathe into life, right?
Yes.
It ended up with the last male member having cystic fibrosis. Yeah.
Wow. There's one story from this book that just sticks out for me, and it's about this guy who, it was his 21st birthday, and he woke up in the middle of the night and he was freezing cold. Like it was like it wasn't winter, and it was freezing cold, and he just kept putting layers of clothes on, blankets, and he just couldn't get warm. And then he went into this spiral in his mind of impending doom if he went back to sleep, and it triggered a cycle of complete insomnia. So by the time he got to Mark Woolen's clinic, he was like a chronic insomniac at 20. So it was like literally the day he turned 21. And Mark Woolen does an exercise with each person where they do a family tree. And he couldn't recall his father's family tree. So he had homework to go home and do, and sit with his dad and sit and go through the family tree. And in that process, he discovered that before he was born, he had an uncle that passed away, but he was never told that he had an uncle that passed away. His father was so traumatized by losing his brother that he never just spoke about it. And guess what the story was? The father's brother was driving in a snowstorm and pulled over at the side of the highway in the middle of nowhere, and there was no phone reception, and it was either I'm going to sit in my car and freeze to death, or I need to walk to try and find a shelter so I don't die. So he got out of his car and he walked, and he literally died of hypothermia at the side of the road when he was 21.
Yeah, okay.
And here's this kid, this lad that has grown up his whole life not really knowing the story. And then the day he turns 21, the unprocessed trauma that his father went through losing his brother has imparted into his son. Like, it's triggered that trauma. Like, how crazy is that?
Yeah, so when we listen to these stories, right, we have to ask, well, how does that happen and why would that
How does that happen?
So then you like, so I get to see what happens before we incarnate and what happens when we leave our bodies, right? So then if we take it back to before we come into our bodies, we've created this beautiful network that does take a bit of time to create the agreements of this life in order to help each other either awaken certain patterns so that we can experience ourselves working through them.
Yes.
And like you were saying in that story, that son has an agreement that if the dad doesn't work through that trauma, that son will help by bringing it up to the surface. And if he was able to work on it, like it sounds like he
Yes.
has, it's now done and dusted and doesn't have to be passed on.
Yes. Absolutely.
So that's amazing,
Absolutely.
isn't it? When you think
It's
about
amazing.
the intricacies that have to happen
Yes.
and that we exist before we are in these physical bodies.
Yes. Absolutely. I remember, I got to mark woolen through Gabor Mate. And I remember listening to him. He did like an hour and a half conversation, and I like listened to that hour and a half conversation. I can't remember who he did that with, but it was a similar theme. It was about generational trauma. And I was like, I was literally crying after it. I was like, man, I have fucked up my kids. Like this is crazy. Like what these kids are going to be sitting with. And that's just me. And then when I factor their dad into it as well, it's like, holy shit, what have we done? But they're fine. They're all good. But yeah, it's like it does. Like if we knew these things before we became parents, man, we would fucking, it would be so different.
Oh, absolutely it would. Like I've learned all this after becoming a parent as well.
Yes.
And
You like become a parent and then learn it.
yeah. Well, we're leading into that, right? Well, it wasn't for
Yeah.
us. We were part of the pathway of allowing that to come down to the
Yes.
future generations after.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I look at now and I look at I've got 400 books in this house. And I'm like, man, and none of them are fiction.
Yep.
They're all like meaningful wisdom.
Yeah.
I feel good that I can actually one day in the distant future leave this and knowing that I've like left a lot of wisdom to my kids. Hopefully that they get to read a bit of it before they have kids.
Yeah. I understand that. What's her name? Dr. Northrup. I was given a book when I
Yeah.
was in yoga teaching. When I was pregnant with my second daughter, someone gave me this book. It's a huge book, like it's
Yeah.
very dense. And she's an obstetrician, and she
Yeah.
blends the knowledge of obstetrics with
Yeah.
spirituality and
Yeah.
consciousness.
Yeah.
And that's a very good read for anyone who is
Okay.
not a parent or in the very early stages. Get that book,
Yeah.
do yourself a favor, and read it. It's amazing. I didn't read
Okay.
it for like a decade or two after,
Yeah. Yeah.
but it's a very good
Okay.
read.
I will link all the books that we've talked about in the comment sections on each platform
Okay,
so
great.
people
I'll
can,
get
yeah.
the proper name of that book.
Yeah. Yeah. Please. Definitely do.